It was snowing outside. It got darker and darker. It was just before Christmas. In this cold season, a little beggar girl walked through the streets with her bare head and bare feet. Her legs were completely red from the cold. In her hands the girl carried a box. It was a little match seller. For the whole day she did not sell a single match, since no one paid attention to the girl. She could not return home, because that day she did not help out a penny. The girl had no choice but to wander the streets further. Finally the girl found a cozy place around the corner of the house. She sat down on the frozen ground. The girl felt even colder. Her hands were completely frozen, and her fingers ached from the cold. She couldn't take this pain anymore. The girl timidly took out one match. With trembling hands, she struck a match against the wall. The match flashed brightly, and began to burn with an even light flame, like a tiny candle. The poor girl shifted it from hand to hand to warm her fingers. She imagined herself sitting by a large fireplace in a beautiful room. This made the girl even warmer. But suddenly, the flame went out. The fireplace disappeared, and only a burnt match remained in his hand. The girl lit another match. To prevent the wind from blowing, the poor thing turned to face the wall. The girl looked at the match, and the wall suddenly disappeared. A large, elegant room appeared before her eyes. There were many different foods on a set table with a snow-white tablecloth. The girl wanted to take a piece of meat, but the match went out, and a cold, damp wall again stood in front of the poor thing. The girl lit another match. Now she was sitting in front of a luxurious Christmas tree. This tree was much taller and more elegant than those that the girl had ever seen. Thousands of candles burned on its green branches. The girl could not take her eyes off them. But suddenly the match went out. The lights began to go higher and higher, and soon turned into clear stars. The girl again struck a match against the wall, and when everything around was lit up, she saw how one of the stars rolled across the sky, leaving a long trail of fire behind it. Probably someone died, the girl thought. Her beloved grandmother said more than once that when an asterisk falls, someone's soul flies into heaven. And suddenly, her kind and affectionate grandmother appeared in front of the girl. She appeared for a short moment. And then the match burned out in the girl's hands. The image dear to her vanished. The girl hastily struck all the matches remaining in the pack, just to see her grandmother again. The matches flared up so blindingly that it became brighter than during the day. The grandmother appeared in front of the girl again. She had never seen her as beautiful as she is now. The girl dreamed that it would never end. Grandmother took her granddaughter by the hand, and together they flew high into the sky where there is no hunger, no cold, no fear. The little girl felt extraordinarily good. And just at that moment a star flew across the sky. On a frosty morning, around the corner of the house, they found a little girl lying under the wall. Her eyes were closed. A blush played on her cheeks. An affectionate smile lit up her face. There were a lot of burnt matches around the girl. No one had any idea what miracle she happened to see, and among what beauty they, together with their grandmother, met this Christmas night. In one small town there lived a toy maker, Geppetto.
Hello!
He made a living selling homemade wooden toys. He liked his work. The only thing the old master regretted was that he had no children. One day, while walking in the woods, Geppetto saw an excellent log for new toys. He took the log with him and brought it to the workshop. Immediately, without delay, the old man began to cut a toy out of him. But suddenly he heard a thin voice from the log. Geppetto thought what he imagined. He continued to carve the toy, and after a while he heard the voice again. Geppetto decided that he was simply getting too old and began to hear strange voices.
Oh no!
The old man continued to work. First, he made the doll's head. Then arms and legs appeared. Geppetto finished the doll and sat her down in a chair. and he decided to clean up after himself. And at that moment he heard the voice again. Geppetto froze and looked around. But there was no one in the room except a wooden doll. The old man continued his work. And suddenly, the doll jumped up from the chair. Geppetto was speechless. When he realized that his doll came to life, he decided to give her a name. And he named him Pinocchio. Geppetto and Pinocchio lived merrily together. It's time to send your son to school. Geppetto lived poorly and had no money for school supplies for Pinocchio. He decided to sell his jacket and gave the money to the boy. Pinocchio took the money and happily hurried to school. Suddenly, he saw a crowd of people. To find out what was happening, the boy squeezed forward and saw in front of him a huge colored tent. It was a circus. The clown stood in front of the entrance and barked visitors. Pinocchio became very interested in what was inside. But the clown would not let him in, because the boy did not have a ticket. Pinocchio took money out of his pocket and gave it to the clown. Going inside the tent, the boy saw how funny dolls were playing a performance on the stage. At the same time, the owner of the circus noticed Pinocchio. He was very happy to see a living doll and decided to take Pinocchio into his performance. As soon as the show was over, the owner of the circus caught the boy and put him in a cage. Pinocchio was very upset that he did not obey his father and did not go to school. He burst into tears. And suddenly, a fairy appeared in front of him. She saw that Pinocchio greatly regretted his deed and decided to save him. The fairy cast a spell, and Pinocchio was on the street with money in his hands. He headed to school again. On the way, Pinocchio met a blind cat and a cunning fox. When they found out that the boy had money, the cat and the fox decided to take it. They said that this money is not enough for school supplies and it needs to be increased. And for this they need to plant money in a magic field. A money tree should grow from the earth, from which a generous monetary harvest could be reaped. The naive Pinocchio believed the scammers and gave his money. When the boy was left alone and without money, the fairy appeared in front of him again. Pinocchio lied to the fairy and said he had already bought school supplies. As soon as he said this, his nose began to grow. The more Pinocchio lied, the longer his nose became. He was very scared and told the fairy the whole truth. At the same instant, the boy's nose shrank to normal size. The fairy warned that every time Pinocchio cheated, his nose would enlarge. After these words, the boy again found himself on his way to school with money in his hands. Suddenly, the owner of the circus blocked the road to Pinocchio. He was terribly angry that the boy was able to escape and wanted to put him back in the cage. But Pinocchio was not easy to catch. Without hesitation, he jumped into the water. Pinocchio was made of wood, so he didn't drown. And the current carried the boy forward. When he was already swimming to the shore, a giant fish swallowed him. At the same time, desperate to look for his son on land, old man Geppetto decided to start searching on the water. He borrowed a small boat from a fisherman friend and swam to look. Suddenly a violent storm began. The boat could not cope with the waves and crashed. The old man could not swim and therefore began to drown. And then, a huge fish that swallowed Pinocchio swallowed Geppetto. When he got inside, he immediately saw his son. Seeing his father, Pinocchio was very happy. He was very sorry that he had not obeyed and promised from that moment to always do as his father told him. Seeing that Pinocchio was truly sorry, the fairy decided to save them. She freed the boy and the old man from the belly of the fish and carried them to the shore. Pinocchio became a very intelligent and obedient boy. He went to school every day, and after studying he helped his father in the workshop.